Hey, this is Tom from Nightingale Games talking about War Room, Larry Harris game, and this is the fourth video in a series on opening moves. We've talked about Germany, Italy, Japan, and the Soviet Union so far, and so now we're going to talk about the British Commonwealth. Here's their little island, and you can see right from the get-go that it's a little complicated. There's some American forces that start the game in Great Britain. Let's see, you can see them here. There's some air forces and some land forces. And we've got a bomber and 3 fighters with some land forces, and they have to hold off the potential of an invasion here. There's plenty of German air units that could come and bomb Great Britain. You can see they have a significant industry, but that can be whittled down. And there's also a significant strategic value there, 8. So losing Great Britain would be very, very bad for them. You can see they have a great naval defense of 2 battleships, and A6 and A7, along with 2 cruisers. They have to face the German cruisers here and their U-boats, which might raid, or they might all gang up and try to take out one of these naval commands. There's the convoys that they have to protect out in the Atlantic. And there's another American convoy up here. So in the homeland, they're a little bit all alone. But the difficult thing about the British Commonwealth is that they're scattered all around the world. So that makes them probably, in my opinion, the most challenging nation to play. And so we'll review some of their other locations. They really rely on half the game. They're begging the US to help them to ignore the Japanese and take care of the Germans. Unless the Germans focus on the Soviets entirely, the British are often first ones to go up the track, and because they are spread thin and a target. So let's move on to the British Commonwealth, which is down in Africa. They have some starting units in Egypt here that have to face off against the Italians and the Germans in Libya coming across Rommel. And there's, as mentioned before in the first video, there's a battle for control of the Mediterranean. And you can see that they have some more navy and a carrier that might come in to help assist with that. So that is frequently one of the first moves, is to support that. Although they could go off and face the Japanese to try and take out Sumatra. But Egypt is particularly vulnerable because it has controls the Suez Canal, but it also has an oil. The Middle East, all of Britain's oil lies in these 3 locations, plus some in Canada over there. You can see that they have no oil in Great Britain itself. So this is pretty important to them, although it's actually secondary for Germany, primarily because of the threat of Soviets here. Um, so if they can hold off this larger force, perhaps with assistance from their navy, preventing the crossing of the Italians, then they'll be in good shape if they can control the Mediterranean. They also start with 2 fighters in Gibraltar, which are flexible. They can help defend the UK itself, pose some attacks here, and also come over to help with control of the Mediterranean. And you can see down below in South Africa, they have some land units which might take to the sea and try to take out French West Africa. They could also head up this coast and head in here to support Egypt, or they might rail up and go by land. This all is quite vacant in the early game, low value, strategic value. Some don't have any at all. Madagascar has, while it's controlled, it has no strategic value points. There is a cruiser and submarine down here, which can face off against the submarines perhaps, or maybe come into the Mediterranean, or again head east, which is what we'll do. You can see there's Turkey is a good blocking point so that they are unable to get into Germany, but likewise Germany is unlikely to send too many infantry and land forces down through Turkey. The UK often sends forces back and forth along this rail line. Sometimes they put units in to assist with the defense of the Caucasus, or if Italy somehow gets a foothold here, there's a back and forth across there. And India, you can see, is quite valuable at 5 strategic, and they also have significant industries there, able to produce 5 new units. So sometimes these come over here, and there's a aggressive move on Burma to diminish Japan's strength over here. The Himalayas are impassable, and Afghanistan is neutral. So there's not an easy way to move these forces up into this sort of no man's land here. Sometimes they go and attack these oil-rich islands here, Sumatra and Java, by jumping in the water. But generally they face off against here and assist in defending China from the Japanese land attack. And then, so there's this part, the homeland, Africa, both down here and in the Mediterranean. Then there's the Middle East, and there's Burma, all of these different hotspots for the British to consider. And then there's also Australia, which is pretty critical as far as holding back Japan. So they have to coordinate a lot with the Americans. Sometimes they hop in the drink to try and claim some of these oil-rich islands over here. Sometimes they have to hold off an invasion. Rarely. Japan rarely actually invades Australia, but sometimes they manage to get in. So oftentimes there's the obvious struggle here in New Guinea and Papua, since they both are right up against each other. But sometimes the British make their way up and, coordinated with the US, manage to push northward towards Japan itself. And you can see there's the vast divide of the Pacific, which takes a while to cross. They also have some forces over in Canada if somehow Japan makes their way, which is extremely rare. But it's happened before, and they also have some forces here, which you can tell that they're going to be spread thin with the number of orders, but these can also hop into the drink to make interesting maneuvers in the North Atlantic, or defend against strange attacks in the Caribbean. So they are truly a global nation that has its fingers in lots of pies, and they are very difficult, and like I said, they are often the first to go up on the stress wheel. So I'd recommend most experienced player consider playing the British Commonwealth. Next up, the US and China.